There's something about comedy and video editing, even if you're not editing comedy, but it teaches you timing, pacing, and, it's also just social skills. I think, people like to work with people that they can get along with very
Yeah.
easily. And I think things like improv, comedy build confidence, self-esteem, and I think that as a soft skill is amazing when you're looking for work.
We go. All right. So welcome back, everybody. My name is Michael Lautman. This is unEditing. And today I have with me Lisa Drupsteen, who is a freelance video editor. And we are going to talk about, well, a bunch of different things. So Lisa, welcome to the show. I'm glad to get a chance to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. What a fun initiative.
Yeah. So let's just dive right in, which is, how did you get into video editing initially?
I will try to keep this short, but it is
you
a
don't
very
have to.
long
It's okay.
story.
It's fine.
I totally just fell into it. I don't think there was ever a day I woke up and decided to become a video editor. It was just
Really?
through a series of creative projects, life changes. I actually used to work as a therapist and as a manager at a social service agency.
Mm.
So complete
Full disclosure,
180.
you used to work with my sister.
Yes, Alyssa. Oh my gosh. We were very close at work, which is so funny. So when you reached out and I saw the last name, I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah, there's not a lot of us, so yeah.
Yeah. Such a small world. Yeah, so I was working there up until COVID hit and the world went into lockdown and again, through a series of life events, I decided to move back to Toronto to be closer to family. And also, I was kind of at a fork in the road of what I wanted my next chapter to look like. And so I had ultimately made the decision that I wanted to take more of a creative route.
Mm-hmm.
And so I turned my parents' basement into my own makeshift film studio. And it was like an 8x8 little low ceiling basement. And because I hadn't really dabbled in film too much. At this point, I had just done some stupid YouTube videos. And anyway, so I'm in the basement and I'm teaching myself how to use a green screen and again, starting multiple businesses and multiple YouTube channels. And I was just loving the craft of figuring out how to work out lighting and camera. And then with that, I had to edit all my own videos.
Right.
And that's when I was like, this is actually really fun. I love the balance of technical and creative.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, I was having an absolute blast. And about a year and a half went by, and I'm still just making stupid videos in their basement. And I'm like, okay, what is the plan here? Because this is not sustainable.
No.
And so I was doing some research online and came across the Second City Film School, which is a comedy film school based in Chicago. And I was actually, when I discovered it, it was a day past the application date.
No, okay.
But everything in me, like the universe was speaking to me and it was like, this is your next chapter. You have to fight for this. You have to do this. It was a very powerful feeling. And so I reached out to the coordinator and I said, please, please, please let me get an application in. And she was like, okay, if you can get it in 48 hours, we'll consider it. And so luckily I needed a demo reel and I had all these stupid YouTube videos that I had done in my parents' basement. So I whipped those together and did a cover letter and everything and got in. And so 2 weeks later, I was moving to Chicago. And
whoa, that's crazy.
it was
Okay,
a
yeah, that's
very
really
fast
fast.
turnaround. Very, very fast. And the rest is kind of history. It was the best year of my life studying comedy and film. And it's interesting. It wasn't really focused on the technical. It was really, really heavy on the storytelling and character development. But again, we had to film practically weekly videos and projects. And I was editing all my own stuff because I loved it so much and just learned so much. There was a couple intensives we could take on film editing, but again, it was just the basics, just to be able to pull a story together. And so the program ended, and I had actually in the program met my now husband. And so he is US based. I am a Canadian, obviously. And so I had to move back. I had to leave the US. But my heart was like, well, I want to keep seeing where this relationship is going to go. So I opted to find remote work. And the light bulb kind of clicked on, and I was like, well, now I have video editing skills, and I'm seeing a lot of posts for remote work for video editors, and ended up finding something on a Facebook forum. And my first gig was part-time for a really, really nice guy who was very brave to give me a chance. Ty Delgatti Picture Post in Toronto, shout out. And he hired me as a junior editor. It was very part-time, so maybe 10 to 20 hours a week, depending on the contracts he was getting. And he just like took me under his wing and like taught me all the things I would have to know for different types of clients, whether you're working for more corporate or for YouTube. So this is my first time really stepping into taking YouTube editing more seriously and what
Right.
goes into that. And so he taught me a lot. And ultimately, a few months later, the hours weren't increasing, and so I had to leave. I was very sad because it was a great working relationship. But then I ended up finding another full-time job, which I've been working at for 2.5 years now for a YouTube content creator. And that's it. It just, like I said,
That's
it
a great
fell into
story.
place.
That's crazy. Yeah, actually, so that leads me into what I want to ask you next. Is you've been the channel you've been working for the last little while is DIY Danny, right? And that is, there's like 300,000 subscribers and like millions of views. So how did that relationship start?
So again, I feel so blessed with these human beings who I felt like just gave me a chance. But when I interviewed with her, she kind of acknowledged that I didn't have the same level of experience technically as a lot of the other applicants, but she loved that I had a background in comedy because she likes adding a little bit of a comedic flair to her stuff. And she loved that I had a background in creative arts therapy. And so because she loves to use DIY and creativity as like a very therapeutic tool, and
Right.
so we
You can
really
really get that
bonded.
sense.
Yeah, so we really bonded over that. And so it just felt like such a good fit when we met. And yeah, so again, the rest is history. It just fell into place. We started working, and there was like a probationary period, but we kind of completely forgot about that. We knew that this was a good
Really?
fit.
That's incredible. Yeah. So one of the things that I hear a lot when I talk to younger editors or people who are studying is one is the how to even like break into sort of the YouTube market. It's not something I've really looked at. So what was your experience? So I know because you started with one other person, and so were you just like looking on forums or LinkedIn? What was your process like in that stage, if you can remember?
I mean, I don't have a ton of history of finding work in
Right.
the film world, but I will say, and I constantly encourage people to look on Facebook. I
Really?
think, yeah, I think if you can find all the groups that are really, really niche for the city you're living in and for the kind of job you want to do. And so I think I found both of mine on a Facebook group for like paid post-production jobs in Toronto. That was it.
Okay.
And so I looked on there and I just kept, and again, like the timing of when they posted and when I saw it, like everything just was I was very lucky, I'll acknowledge. But I find, this is a hypothesis, but I think it might be less competitive than something like LinkedIn or something that you find on one of these more major platforms. And I also think like they can stalk your Facebook profile, so they get a good
Yeah.
sense of like who you are. And I don't know, I think it's a more casual way into job hunting that's a little bit more accessible. That's just my prediction, but it worked well for me, so no complaints.
I'm really interested on this idea that like it was in fact like your non video experience that locked it down with DIY Danny for you. And I really feel that in fact as a video editor, because there, like you said, when you went to film school, there was a tiny bit of it that was actually about the technical side of editing. And there's some stuff that sure a formal education can be really helpful with, but there's a lot of stuff that you can learn either on your own or through online forums or online courses or just from practice. But it's so interesting to me that it was this idea that editing isn't just the technical skill, right? It's about telling a story and helping someone tell a story, but the rest of our life experience really plays into how we approach presenting that story or that information or whatever.
100%. I, not only with Danny, but with my first job with Ty, he again said, look, you don't really have a lot of experience, but I love that you have a background in comedy. There's something about comedy and video editing, even if you're not editing comedy, but it teaches you timing, pacing, and, it's also just social skills. I think, people like to work with people that they can get along with very
Yeah.
easily. And I think things like improv, comedy build confidence, self-esteem, and I think that as a soft skill is amazing when you're looking for work.
Yeah, I agree.
It's just very, I always encourage people to, even for actors, I know when they're applying for work, they love seeing if you have improv on your CV because they know that it lends to amazing soft skills, thinking on your feet,
Yeah.
being more think outside the box, and 100% people when they're hiring are not just looking for the technical. I think I'm a living proof of that.
I agree with you. And it's funny because I have the same feeling about comedy. And I've talked to a few people about this. When you think even about all of the things of acting, writing, every comedy gets a bad rap from like the highbrow side of things because it's funny, right? You're making people laugh. But it's really, I find it's much harder to make someone laugh than to make someone cry.
Yes,
I
I
mean,
would
like
100%
leaving
agree.
aside fart jokes, but like if you're gonna take it, but like really being thoughtful and clever and then making people really laugh,
Yeah.
it's incredibly difficult. So I could see how then that, like you said, lends itself to timing and pacing,
Hmm.
and even sometimes noticing little details about things that can then be the important thing. That's
Absolutely.
uh that's really interesting. I wanted just to jump back to a little more technical stuff, which is when you're working with right now with DIY Danny, are
Mhm.
you what's your role in the whole process of her video? Are you like in the kind of pre-production videography side, all of that? Are you just
So
on the back end? What's the story? What's your role like?
yeah, it's a good question. I am 100% remote, so
Okay.
we live in different cities.
Okay.
We've only met each other 3 times in person. 3 times in person. Does not feel that way. We're very close. And again, that's just been a huge blessing for me in navigating my long distance marriage but it's, we have weekly team meetings and there was actually one video where I went to her town and stayed with her and I helped her film and I'm in the video. I make my channel debut.
YouTube star.
No big deal. Finally, I'm getting the YouTube numbers I tried in my parents' basement. But no, that was so much fun. And so, in that regard, I helped with the camera work and stuff. But she
Okay.
is an absolute powerhouse. I don't know how she does what she does. She's a one woman show. Well, now since January, she's brought on like a production assistant.
Okay.
But it's crazy. It's crazy what she does. So she does all the filming and then she'll organize all the files very beautifully in a beautiful little package. And she writes a script and then
Okay.
she sends me the Dropbox file and the script. And then we have a team meeting, we go through the script together, and then I'm off on my own. And I work on
Okay.
the episode, and then we do one round of notes, and then we post. And we do that
Wow.
every single
Okay.
week. Yeah.
That's a lot because also
Yeah.
a lot of her videos are not short.
They are not. Thank you for recognizing that.
No, well, look, I mean, this is something that I've run into with clients. So a lot of my work has been with training style videos, talking head training videos.
Yeah.
And even those, where there isn't a ton of shot changes or things like that, even those are the time involved, is incredible. So, if you're doing a 45-minute YouTube video in a week, that's very impressive to me. That seems like a
Thank
lot of
you.
work.
I
Yeah.
think we put in a lot of work and it's something we're very proud of. And now I feel ready to take on anything because it's been a huge lesson in time management and again, knowing what to prioritize. Honestly, it's the best way to learn, just be thrown into the deep end.
Yeah.
And this was certainly a version of a deep end, but it's been such a wild and fun ride.
Yeah. Like, if you don't mind me asking, what do you like so I know there's a fixed number of hours in a week, but if you were doing, say, a half an hour, 45-minute video, like, is that like a 30-hour week, a 50-hour week? What's that? Or does it depend?
It definitely depends because she does different styles of videos. Like she has different series. And
Hmm.
so some are a little bit more graphic heavy,
Mm,
maybe a little bit more angles. And
mm,
so those ones definitely will fill up my week. I will say we've gotten into a pretty good groove, or I've gotten into a good groove with my skill set that I rarely surpass 40 hours a week,
okay.
if at all anymore. And yeah, I'd say kind of the sweet spot is on average 30 to 40
Okay. But it's
with
still a
everything
lot.
combined.
It's still, I think that's something that I think people outside of video editing, you
Hmm.
know, don't necessarily recognize that,
True.
or when people are looking for video editing work, and they're pricing by by the project, they're not recognizing that, oh, maybe an hour per minute of video isn't an hour of work, per minute of video is not actually crazy, on a larger
No,
project.
absolutely not. No, it's crazy because we also commonly work with brands, so we have to do
Mhm.
brand integrations. And she does these really fun intros that, again, are kind of graphic heavy and have a lot of swoops and text and
Right.
whatever.
And so all of that takes more time.
It's amazing. It's like that will take me 2 full days of work to do the intro and the brand integration just to send that off for approval. And then I can do the whole rest of the video in 2 days. So it's
Right.
like it really puts it into perspective that it really is dependent on what the client's asking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And for me, like graphics is not my strong suit.
Hmm.
So also I have to factor that in. Maybe that takes me longer than it would someone who has more formal training in it. But yeah, it depends. Definitely.
Yeah. So I want to just touch on some of your personal projects because you mentioned some of what's available, at least that you sent me to watch. You have now that you mentioned that you have sort of this comedy experience at Second City, it makes more sense to me having watched it because you have a really unique look. I felt there was a very particular style to what you were putting together. How did that come about? When this goes up, I'll show some of the clips if you don't mind. Where did that
Share
come
it.
from?
But where did that come from? So again, this kind of took a very interesting journey because back to when I was working at the social service agency, I was also trying to take a bigger step into my creativity. And so I had actually written and produced a comedy musical for the stage. And we were 3 weeks away from opening when COVID shut it down.
Goodness. Okay.
I know. So it was, again,
Heartbreak.
thanks. But again, it kind of, looking back, it was heartbreaking, but it led me to what my life looks like now.
Right.
Because that play or that musical was called Taxidermy Tim. And when it died, then I went to film school. I was like, I gotta bring it back. It is an unfulfilled creative story. And so I adapted it to be it my short film for our graduation project.
Okay.
And so that was a real passion project, but it was really rooted in like that song that takes place in the
Yeah.
musical is from the original musical. And yeah, it was, gosh, it was so satisfying to see it come to life for the screen, knowing it hadn't been able to be mounted in Montreal. And it did really well. And I think, it was because of it was such my little baby, and I took good care of it, and there
Hmm.
was so much passion behind it, and so much development, because this again was adapted from a musical that took me probably a year to write.
Hmm.
So I was very proud of it. And yeah, so that's when I started leaning into like the dark comedy, and I'm very, very inspired by Edgar Wright,
Mm.
and I love the Evil Dead series, and I love Shaun of the Dead, and those are things that I take a
Yeah, I
lot of.
can see that. Like now that you mention it, for sure, I can see where you would pull that inspiration,
Yeah.
or vibe from. How, when you're working on your own projects, like even just in terms of your thought process or whatever, is it different for you than working on a client's project in any way? Do you approach it differently?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like editing for someone else and editing your own material, I wouldn't even put those in the same category. They are so
Really?
night and day for me. Absolutely. Something I had to learn as an editor for someone else was to switch hats and put on my more, okay, I'm a technical, yes, there's a lot of creativity involved, but like you're not the creative producer, you're not the visionary, you're helping to bring someone else's vision to life. And
Right.
so there was a learning curve for me, definitely, in terms of letting that voice go of, well, I would do it this way. I have a vision for what you want, and so very quickly I
Yeah.
had to shut that voice up because that's not your role. That's not your
Right.
role. And so when I'm doing my own projects, oh, there's just something so, like, that's my creative outlet, which is taking the footage that I've created and the story I want to tell and being able to just play with it without boundaries. It's like, to me, it's a more cathartic process when you're editing
Right.
your own stuff.
Yeah. And when you're working on your personal projects, this is a question I like to ask a lot of people, which is when you're going from writing, pre-production, rehearsal, filming, editing, post, do you consciously switch hats, or does all the roles kind of bleed into each other? Like, do you, when you're writing or shooting, do you think about editing, or when you're, do you think about that all the way through the process, or are you more defined in, what you're doing at each point, or can you even tell?
It's interesting. No, it's a good question. I'm a very visual person. So when I'm writing, I'm seeing pictures.
Okay.
And so I do think organically it's very linked to then how I choose to direct and edit.
Mm-hmm.
So those things kind of bleed a little bit in together. But, one of my favorite concepts is, when you're creating a project, there's 3 versions of it. There's the one you write, the one you film, and the one you edit. And you have to, and those are all very different. And when I look back at my projects, absolutely, I wrote a script and then I look at the final product and I'm like, whoa, this is not at all what I thought it was going to be. Like, there's always these fun surprises that come up. And so I write something, then I bring it to set, and as a director, I like being open to play and try new things and adapt things if they're not working how I thought they would work. And then you take the footage into editing, and as an editor, you can have some fun with, again, increasing the comedy with timing or the way you cut to a certain character, which maybe as a director on set, I didn't fully know. So again, I think it's about being open and flexible in all those roles. They're very intertwined, but especially when you're doing them all yourself, like, I think it's easier to be very flexible and just playful in all those.
Right.
But I don't know if any of that made sense. But
It actually makes perfect sense.
okay, cool.
What's no, not what. Do you think since you have like this sort of almost like a very, like, you had sort of the time, I've talked to some, I guess, younger editors and stuff like that who, in their late 20s or early 30s, and they grew up with video editing in a way that I think maybe, and I'm not making assumptions about your age, but like, I know I didn't, right?
Almost 37.
All right. Well,
I'm
there
happy
you
to
go.
announce it.
Well, I'm 40, almost 48, but I definitely didn't grow up with video editing being accessible.
Right.
There wasn't, we never had a camcorder in my house, and there wasn't a computer in my house until I was most of the way through high school. But so they don't separate, like, it's such an integral part kind of their identity. They've never not been someone who played around with film. Whereas for me, there definitely was a time where I wasn't, and I think the same is true for you. But so getting into editing, has that changed for you how you look at film or video or TV or whatever? Has that changed how you watch, what you notice? I'm just curious.
I feel like there's a few questions in there in terms of, and I'll try to break it, just like comparing myself to some of the younger generations, like this new production assistant, Vanessa, who joined the team. She's about 10 years younger than I am, and she's helping really boost the social side of things.
Okay.
And I wonder, I have less patience for editing for social than I think I do for the full episodes. because that's where I think my age comes in. I don't have the patience
Interesting.
for like, can't give me a big screen, a big video, like something that can breathe. My brain is still not fully on board with these little short boosts of dopamine attacks. And like Vanessa gets it. She's like, here's the list of socials we need, and here, like, these are gonna be great. And I'm like, really? Okay, I trust you. I'm very, and this is probably something if I continue working for content creators, I have to get over. But that's been a challenge, just in terms of that's where I notice my age difference a lot. And then in terms of like the bigger world of cinema and TV, do I notice editing? I think I do, but not in a very obvious way. Like I can tell when something was beautifully edited, but I think the beauty of good editing is that you're not paying attention to it. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense.
So I can tell when something's not edited very well.
Yes.
And
100%.
that's where you start picking apart the details.
Yeah.
But in terms of like movies that just flow and they bring you in and you're along for the ride, then the movie will end. And I very commonly, the first thing I say is, well, two things. That was very beautifully edited because I didn't notice the editing, and beautifully written. I'm a sucker for a good story, and if you don't have story, I don't care how beautiful it is. I don't think
it doesn't
it's garbage.
matter at all. So. I agree with you about that. That's funny. It's I have very much the same experience where, like, just like a bad story will prevent me from getting into it, or bad writing, will just stop me right in my tracks from even going any further.
Yeah.
But I could be in a story and then a bad editing or clunky something will take me right back out of it. There are movies or TV shows where I've gone back to watch because I was like, there's something there and I want to catch, to try and like figure out, not even necessarily from a technical perspective, but to be like, I noticed, I want to go back and watch what's kind of scenes or storytelling things that they did from an editing perspective. But if anything, for me, it's been in a, like, just to recognize the craft that people put into just the thoughtfulness of the editing beyond the writing and the cinematography and direction, to be able to, it's like, I don't think I think like you said, like you'll come away recognizing that something was really well done without necessarily having specific things about it. And then sometimes I'll go back and I'll be like, all right, this is one of those moments where like, oh my God, that's amazing. But I don't,
sure.
I wouldn't.
Well, I think it's interesting. To me, it's like a spectrum because it depends on the style of the movie too. Like if you have a very realist movie, you don't want the editing to be like, woo, blah, blah, because that doesn't fit the tone. You, as an editor, your job is to get them lost in that world.
Yes.
And not recognize that this is a movie. Versus, when you're watching something like Shaun of the Dead, those transitions are like my weak spot. They're so beautiful because they're so fun and so playful, and like they tell a story in 3 visuals and then you're in the next scene. Like, it's so beautiful. So movies like that, I will see a transition and I'll be like, that was brilliant. Like, that was so well done.
And that's
so
the point of movies.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? You're not pretending to be in like a real place in a sense.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So super fun. And I love that about editing. It's so versatile and you can tell many different stories with different styles of editing.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, back to some more technical stuff. What's your platform of choice? What do you edit on?
I'm a Premiere lady.
And why?
Good question. So it's funny, again, before when you were talking about how we didn't grow up with certain platforms and software. I'm trying to think, what would have been like Windows Movie Maker or whatever?
Or
that was my
iMovie
first. Yeah, because I was a PC person, so I always thought people that used iMovie were so cool. And then when I got into editing my own stuff in my parents' basement, I obviously wasn't making money, so I was like, okay, what's a free program I could use? Oh God, it was like Cyber Director or something.
Oh my goodness, yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so I downloaded the free version and it was amazing. It did all the things I needed it to do. But then I went to film school and I was like, hey, have you guys heard of Cyber Director? And they're like, no, we use Premiere. And I was like, oh. And that's when I really realized there was a very obvious hierarchy to software.
Yeah, there is.
And it was just the one that at the time most of my teachers were using.
Hmm.
All the workshops were based around Premiere. I had already really gotten into, again, a hobby of mine at the time was photography, so I was using a lot of Photoshop.
Okay.
And so it just felt like an organic switch for me, and so I switched to Premiere, and again, there's a little bit of a learning curve there. Yeah, that's just, again, I've just been so lucky that the two job postings were like, must know Premiere. And I was like,
I
that's the
mean,
one I know.
you
That's
know,
it.
I said it like I'm asking you why as if there's some mystery, but the truth is like I work on Premiere too. It is kind of, after like Avid and all the like the super movie studio stuff, it's
For sure.
really like sure there's people who are Final Cut people, but it's really yeah,
That's on the
exactly.
way out too, I
I
feel.
yeah, and and there's the sort of super hipster Da Vinci people.
Da Vinci people. I tried. I tried so
Nodes. What the hell?
hard. I can't figure it out.
No.
My one weakness that I need to work on is color grading, and that seems to be the common relationship
It's so
between Premiere
hard.
and Da Vinci. I don't get it. I'll do workshop like it's so frustrating. I consider myself to be a very fast learner, and I hate when I find something that I just can't wrap my head
So
around.
I'm with you
Coloring is one.
100%. Coloring is just, and I'll do a little workshop or watch tutorials and they're like, "Oh, you just do da 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 da," and boom, and I'm like, it never ever ever
It
works
never
that way for
booms.
me. And it's really hard to do well. I was talking about this with somebody else I interviewed and they were
Hmm.
saying, when you're involved at every stage of your project, you kind of are maybe really good or pretty good at a bunch of things, but then you take someone. I always find it amazing, like someone who makes a career as a colorist. You know,
There's a demand.
I know, and you see them, and
The
you're like,
skill.
okay, now I understand why you have a career doing this because I don't know like what genetic thing happens in your eyes that's different from the rest of us.
I can't see it. I can't
I
see
just
it.
can, you can see it when it's done, but like
True.
I never know how to get there.
I'm one of those where I will color a still or a clip, and then I'll be like, this looks so good. And then I'll compare it to a different clip that's actually good. And I'm like, magenta. And I'm like, so discolored. And I'm like, God damn it. I thought I had it. No, I can't. It's a science. It's literally a science.
It really is. And it's so subtle sometimes too. It's just these
So
tiny
subtle.
little things. So
My old boss, he was a colorist, and I would send him all my new projects even when I wasn't working for him, and I'm like, any notes? And he's like, Lisa, the color. What are you doing? I'm like, no. Anyway,
yeah,
it's an ongoing journey of learning.
yeah. All right. What? So I just to wrap up, like
Yeah.
if you're someone who wants to get into, and I know, like you said, you don't have a ton of experience getting jobs. You've been pretty fortunate in the
Very.
freelance world, but someone who's looking to break into it or to figure out how to balance, their creative work and their commercial work, what advice would you have for someone starting out in this field?
Just do the thing. Practice your skills, hone your skills, even if that's moving back in with your parents into their basement and making a film studio and making YouTube videos. Editing is one of those things where if you're not doing it consistently, it's so easy to get rusty.
Mm.
You constantly want to be updating your demo reel and improving your skills, and people want to see that, if you're interviewing.
Mm.
And I think, if it's something you're truly passionate about, I don't think that's too difficult to achieve. Like, just keep doing the things you love. And I think the second thing kind of leads back into something I was saying earlier about my own journey. If you're also a creator and a filmmaker, just a reminder to stay humble when you're working as an editor for other people.
That's really, really good advice.
Really respect the vision that they are bringing to you, because people want to work with people that are going to treat their project with respect and with care. What they don't want is an editor who's like, actually, I'm a filmmaker and I would do this differently. That's not your job. Your job is to help bring their project to life. So just a reminder that that's what you're interviewing for, and it's a very important role. Stay
I
humble.
agree. I think there's a, you know, especially the last year and a half or so with the explosion of the sort of so-called AI tools.
Mm.
There's the predicted death of every industry, basically, but I don't see it for video production work, really.
Maybe one day, but from what I've seen, we are so far from
I
that.
know.
Because you need a lot of humanity when you're editing a story to really bring it to
Yes,
life.
that's really important. That's a really good point.
And that's something we have over robots. So, for now, exactly.
Listen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk. I really,
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. I've really enjoyed uh, talking to you and getting to know you a bit.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. So fun.
Do you know what's gonna, so I know you have some big transitions coming up in the future,
Mhm.
but do you know work-wise, like what's happened? What do you have? Do you have projects coming that we can talk about or we can tell people about, or it's the future's wide open right now?
It is so wide open. The world is my oyster. But yeah, so I'm about to
Salty and
have
raw. There it is.
salty and raw and kind of gross and don't really know what you're gonna get. Yeah, well, time will tell. I'm moving to the States in August and
Good
it's
luck
gonna
with
take a
that.
few months to settle in and check out the industry and we'll see. See what
Yeah,
happens.
well, please keep me advised of whatever you happen to be doing and any projects that you're working on because I'm super super curious to see what you do next.
I will.
So,
Thank you so much. You too. I can't wait to see how this podcast flourishes.
well, like I said, you are maybe just the third interview now,
Wow.
and I'm working on getting a couple more done before we go live, but obviously I'll let you know as soon as that happens.
Amazing.
So, again, thanks so much for your time, and
Thank you.
this has been really a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Hey, anytime. I'm
All
around. I'm
right.
happy.